So why we're organizing this e-seminar? Because MIT's bootcamps fields are expanding, and we saw a great opportunity to focus on the sports industry. Because sports industry is transitioning, it's becoming disruptive industry with many things happening. And we thought it will be really interesting to do a boot camp where we can organize all the experts from all around the world and share the knowledge together to build the more exciting future in the sports industry together. So MIT Sports Bootcamp will be happening September 7 to 13 in Pre-Zero Arena. It will be really interesting, where whole bootcamp will be happening in the stadium, in one of the best DFL organized stadium. And you still can go to the bootcamps page, MIT Bootcamp, where you can register. So the website is bootcamp.mit.edu/sports. And Nico is one of the persons who is helping us to host this bootcamp in Germany, who is also representing university with whom we are cooperating. MIT is cooperating, which is WHU. So we are really happy to see everybody joining us and learning a little bit more about sports industry. So the first thing what I would love to is for Caiti and Nico. I'm so sorry, Caiti. Since I kind of learned it in the first way to call you Caiti, now I need to relearn it. So Caiti, how did you happen to be in the sports industry? You have such a background in marketing, in digital media and analytics. How did you become to be in the sports industry? Please let us know a little bit about your background also.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I do have to apologize. I thought that I had put myself on mute there. I am working from home today, which is one of the benefits of being an entrepreneur sometimes. But that means that I have my dog in the background who has decided that now is the right time to be disruptive and start scratching around at stuff. So I apologize if there's a little bit of background noise that happens because of that. So I have been working in marketing, advertising, and data technology for more than 15 years now. I was doing that at some larger media companies like Viacom and Spotify. But I have also, SheIS is my third company that I've actually founded myself, and my second nonprofit. So my entrance into the sports world has actually been through the revenue side of it. So for example, when I was at Viacom, we worked with the Premier League over in the UK, or the NFL, or the MLB here in the US, to put together licensed programs through some of the Nickelodeon properties. Or when I was at Spotify, it was working with organizations like Nike and the NBA to figure out revenue opportunities and consumer-facing opportunities. But I will say that my love for and passion for the sports world started much, much before my career did. So my career in sports actually started when I was about 10 years old, and I started playing sports myself. Over the course of my life, I've played 5 different sports, now 6 if you count marathoning. So sports has always been a really kind of primary part of my life, and what we're doing with SheIS really helps to marry both the passion that I have as an athlete, and as a former athlete, as a current marathoner, and the kind of business aspects of how do we treat the women's sports world as a business, not as a charity. How do we elevate the conversations and the storytelling and the access and use of data within the sports world in a way that really helps to overall elevate the conversation that we're having across the sports industry.
Thank you so much for joining us to our seminar. And how you mentioned is, it's amazing how you found all the passion what you have and also the business side to express yourself. And I feel like in the sports industry, people not really aware fully how many different opportunities there are. And the sports is becoming almost every person's daily part of the daily life, participating or watching sports or trying to be healthy, because it represents so much about our ability to progress and learn and develop. And it's really interesting what you mentioned about the revenue side, which sport has a lot of money, and we will talk about what opportunities in the sports are and how unique the industry is a little bit later. But first, I would love to hear and for Nico to share how you came being in McKinsey, dealing and being part of so many different industries as a consultant. How and why did you got interested in the sports industry and be also research in future of sports?
Sure. Warm welcome, everyone, from my side as well. Maybe a bit of a background. My name is Nico. I'm from Germany. I have a background in business, very classical. I then joined, after my studies, I joined McKinsey & Company, consulting company, and basically worked in various industries, various functions, a bit of everything. If there was any focus at all, then it was in marketing and sales, I guess, and pharma. I enjoyed that very much. I enjoyed that work very much, but I realized I always did a lot of sports. I played football. Football has always been my passion. I love football. I love all other sports too. And then I realized I can, it's a nice job if I go to consult an energy client or a logistics client. I can do this, but I would even, if I have the choice, I'd rather talk about football all day. So I thought about how can I combine my hobby with my job. So and I ended up with my professor here, Sasha, who is deeply he's also a former McKinsey guy, now a professor at WHU, and he has good roots into the industry. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do a PhD and take the time to get to know the industry, because I think it's not as easy to transition into the sports industry if you have not competed as an athlete at a certain level, or if you are not personally related to anyone in the business. Then it's quite difficult. So, but there is a lot of ways to get in, and yeah, that's how I got here, basically.
Thank you also, Nico, for joining us. And you mentioned Sasha Schmidt, who is also will be one of the lecturers in our boot camps, and he is also expert besides future sports, what you're doing with him, research with, but also esports, which is also really interesting field. And you also mentioned about uniqueness about sports industry, and it's a little bit different how to enter the industry than any other industry. And from my perspective, I'm Olympian, also a founder, had a few startups, and I'm heading this MIT Sports Entrepreneurship Bootcamp. And me as an athlete, I thought it's all about performance, and this is what the sport industry is. However, becoming more transitioning into the business sides, I understood and saw how many different parts of the skills could be realized in the sports industry, which is media, wearables, what is related to the performance and the fan engagement and the business development. And last year when I did a huge research about sports industry, it was noted sports industry is transitioning from being viewed as a hobby into the serious business, and for several reasons. Because of, first of all, it's becoming only industry where fan is watching sports and something entertainment live, and any company loves to be in the place where they can be noted and engaged for their advertising purposes. And also participation is increasing in sports because of the health reasons and about self-realization. So industry, while transitioning, needs to, and that means more money is coming into the industry, more investors, seeing more and more opportunities. Certain reports say from last year only 30% increased in financing and investing in the sports ventures. So industry is booming. However, it is in the transition period where a lot of opportunities, especially in the data analytics, are welcomed in the industry, in the business side, and in development of all areas what is in the sports industry. So now I would love to ask Caiti and Nico, how unique is the sports industry from other ones, and how people can enter it? And before you guys answer, I still want to encourage everyone to share the questions with us, which we will be answering at the end of the e-seminar. So Caiti, maybe let's start with you. How different it is sports industry and how to enter it?
So I would say some of the unique qualities of the sports industry is kind of what you touched on. It is the real what's happening now with how sports events happen. We see that from an entertainment perspective and from a media perspective, it's one of the last remaining industries that you really want to watch and consume live. And whether that's live in person, which is usually the most kind of experiential opportunity and the most emotional connection that happens between a fan and the given sport or the given athletes. And there is now, with the expanse of digital technology, a real insurgence into the streaming ecosphere and how we're using things like Twitter Live or like Hulu Live to offer up more sports experiences to the consumer base. And that's really unlike any other industry, because a lot of the other industries have now been able to transition into, other entertainment industries have been able to transition into either binge watching, where, you're getting kind of a whole package of episodes or a whole set or a whole series all at once, and people watch it, all the way through, rather than what it used to be. You waited for, date myself, you waited for, Thursday night to watch Friends. And you knew that, 8 p.m. on Thursday night, you're watching Friends, and that's the latest episode. Now you can watch all 10 seasons on Netflix whenever you want, and you can binge as many episodes as you want. So it doesn't have to be that live entertainment experience anymore. But that's something that has still really remained within the sports industry. And so, what we're having to adapt for is understanding how the consumption changes because of that, and how to more effectively target consumers and fans and their interaction, because we know that it is almost always going to be a live experience. And how do we ensure that they get the most out of that live experience through either their in-game experience or through information and storytelling that we are feeding to them before, during, and after an event? And how do we capitalize on the live data collection to be able to even further feed the fan experience and the fan opportunity? And how do we do that really in real time? in a way that feels authentic, that doesn't feel forced, that doesn't, feel, especially with all of the privacy stuff that's going on right now, that feels like it's something that the fan is actually opting into. There are a lot of really interesting challenges and kind of unique challenges that still exist in the sports space that, we have all but eliminated in the other entertainment spaces.
Can you share maybe a few, which challenges?
So I would say for the women's sports world specifically right now, data collection is a real challenge. I think, with what you're seeing in the men's sporting world, for example, SAP created a technology that they have partnered with the NHL to do live player tracking. So rolling out next season, I believe they tested it. They, had it at the All-Star event this year in January. There's going to actually be a player tracking chip device that is on each player, and then one that's in the puck, that allows for there to be live stats. And you can hold up your phone and there's an augmented reality experience for the fans in the stadium where they can track and they can see how fast that puck shot just was, or the speed of the given athlete as they're, going down and getting ready to shoot, whatever it is. Like there's numbers of, a number of different technology and data that's going to come out of that. That doesn't really exist anywhere in the women's sports world. We're not capitalizing on some of the technology that exists because it comes at a cost. And right now, that investment isn't being put as fluently into the women's sporting world as it is in the men's. So one of the challenges that we really have to look at is what is the fan experience that happens at a women's sporting event that would make a fan not only engage with the sport itself because they love hockey or they love basketball or whatever it is, but would allow them to draw more personal connection with a given athlete, or would allow them to feel informed about the performance of an athlete, that they then, can look at that and go, wow, there's a softball NCAA Drake pitcher who just, pitched 5 perfect games in a row, which has never happened before, and having that data to be able to conclusively look back and tell the audience in the moment right there, hey, she's just broken a record, means that you have to be tracking all of that data over the years, over the history. It means that you have to be tracking that one player. It means that you have to be looking at various different sports and understanding the data of, how does that compare to the performance in baseball, or how does that compare to the performance at the pro softball level? There's a lot that I think has significantly improved, but there's a lot of technology out there that we still have a real opportunity to bring that more fluently into the women's sports world.
Yeah, it's really interesting opportunities and challenges to tackle in the sports industry, which are unique, and how you said about live fan engagement and tracking and live performance tracking. So I feel these challenges are really interesting to solve. And what about you, Nico? What do you think is the most unique about sports industry, and how people can enter into the sports industry?
Very similar to what Caiti said. I think the way I like to see it, so it's very passionate. Last year I met the governor of the Boston Bruins, and he said that sports is unscripted drama. It's the ultimate reality TV show, and that's really what it is. It's we'll never get that emotional anywhere else except for maybe personal relationships, but sports is so emotional. I know when I see what's going on in a football stadium, it's unbelievable. And yeah, it's life only happens once, and that's sports to me. Why is it unique? I mean, the sports industry is a bit weird. It seems big to us, right, in a way, because we know the big names, we know the superstars, we know the clubs, but it's a relatively small industry, to be honest. So, and first of all, sizing it is quite difficult. So there's not that many reports out there who give a precise number, but roughly somewhere between $800 billion and $1 trillion probably is the value of the entire sports industry. And then if we break that down, that this includes, large players like Adidas and Nike, they obviously contribute a large share, right? And I don't know, things like Fitbit nowadays. But if we just look at sports events and the organization of leagues, even though, yes, of course, the US teams are large franchises, but in the larger scheme, it's all relatively small. But what is interesting, though, is the growth rates, right? They are off the charts. I think that is for exactly that reason, that there is nothing else anymore that needs to be watched live, as Caiti has described. We binge watch, we watch it whenever we want. But just look at last week, the Champions League and European Cup, what happened in football in Europe. I could watch these games on Saturday and I would still enjoy them, but having watched them live, penalty shootouts, 3 days in a row, completely, it was nuts, right? At least for all of you who follow European football, and that's sports. And I think it's interesting for us and hopefully also for the panelists, because there will be so many jobs. The sports industry is also unique because it's, and sometimes I feel sorry to say that, but I like when I look at my clients from my time at McKinsey and when I look at the sports industry, it's highly unprofessional in many areas. I think the US is far ahead of some other countries. I think their franchises, and that's a separate discussion if you like the sports to be a business or not. We love the football romantic or the football romance and Europe a lot. So I don't want to say what is right or wrong. I'm just saying there is a lack of professionalism. Also, when we talk about, and we'll talk about that more, I guess, in a minute, for the role of women. I think sports is also an industry where the role of women is not nearly as far as in other industries. The good news is, though, then there will be so many new positions coming up because clubs are growing, organizations are growing, other players are like broadcasters, media, everything that's related to sports is growing. Apparel, wearables, you name it. So that there will be plenty of jobs. If we look at sports tech investment, for example, as we like in the bootcamp especially, we'll focus a lot on sports tech as well, right? So just in Europe, 5 years ago, there were roughly about 90 million euro invested in sports tech startups across 120 rounds maybe, and then in 2017 we were at 290 million. So it's more than 3 times as much, and the number of rounds only doubled. And then a year later, in 2018, we were at 360 million. So when we talk about growth, that's huge. And the number of rounds reduced to 120 compared to 200, right? So that means ticket sizes and investments in sports are getting a lot bigger, which is an indicator for professionalism or like that the industry is advancing. Heavy investors come in. And I think that's a good sign. It's a good sign for all of us that there will be jobs, there will be opportunities, there will be entertainment, there'll be a lot of emotions.
Yeah, this is why I'm the most excited about this industry and getting into it right now, just because it's in the beginning stages where you can have a lot of impact and see that growth and transitioning. I don't think so there are any other industries which have such a big history, becoming more money and being so raw. You could see where you can be really making a big part and big development in the industry. However, how you said, also mentioning about women, there is a big lack of women in the industry. And now when I'm looking from the admissions part, is such a small part of the women who apply into the sports industry. And we don't only want to see more numbers, but Caiti, sorry. Why do you think it is important to have women in the sports industry?
That's a big question. So I would say like any industry, the presence of women in leadership roles, in roles across all levels, is important for being able to produce the best product and put the best opportunity out to the public, out to your audience. It delivers additional perspective, it delivers additional opportunity. And I mean, if we look at, the audience numbers in any of the given sports, male or female, but looking at the male sports, like in any of those ones, especially in the US, they all have at least 30 to 35% of their audience is female. With the NFL, that's up as high as 45% were the last numbers that I saw. So, and the NFL has actually realized this. They started a couple of years ago putting more merchandise out that, was jerseys in female cuts. And now they're starting to realize, like, it's not just putting out jerseys, but it's putting out jerseys that women can wear that have the athlete's name on them that aren't all pink and bedazzled, because that's not what a lot of these female sports fans are about, so it's them starting to learn the female consumer. And a part of that comes from the fact that they're bringing more female leadership into those discussions and saying, right, what do we need to be considering when we're putting together merchandising contracts? What do we need to be considering when we're putting together marketing campaigns? How do we need to be approaching various aspects of our business that allow us to speak more fluently to our female consumers, who, by the way, in the US represent 80+% of the buying power, of the household buying power. So this is a really powerful audience that you want to be speaking to. And then when it comes to the job opportunities and putting women into those roles, I think the interesting thing, and this is maybe, to go back to the first question, one of the unique things about the sports industry is that it touches almost every single other industry. So, for example, right now with SheIS, we just struck up a partnership with Lyda Hill Philanthropies, who is focused through their If Then initiative on highlighting various opportunities in STEM for young girls and creating more role models for young girls to see women who look like them in the STEM fields and be inspired to pursue careers in STEM. STEM is probably, and this might be, others might disagree with me, but STEM might be the backbone of sports. Whether it's data and analytics and the mathematics that goes into it, whether it is the guy who monitors the ice at an NHL rink or at a hockey rink, like there's actually a scientist who has to be on staff to monitor that, because as the temperature goes up, he has to monitor how the ice fluctuates and keeping it at a certain level of hardness or softness. Like there's science involved in that. There's physics involved in the arc of a basketball and what's going to get it into the basket, as basketball players are training. There are obviously sports medicine is a huge field. There's technology, we've been kind of talking about it, but is becoming an ever more present part of the sports industry. And then of course you have all of the retail angles, you have all of the e-commerce angles, there are just, and the entertainment angles, sports and music, how do they overlap? What are you doing for your in-game entertainment? Are you bringing in, music professionals? Like there's just so many industries that interact with sports. So the opportunities that exist there and the reasons to bring women into those opportunities mean that you have a more comprehensive look and understanding of how you approach various different aspects of any of those given fields. And it's really, I think it's important when we look at it from a societal perspective, when we're giving equal opportunity to women and men, it shows girls and boys that there is a future for both of them, that there is opportunity for both of them to pursue in this industry. And so therefore, girls right now drop out at a rate of 2 times what boys do by the age of 13, basically when they're hitting puberty. They're dropping out of sports at 2 times the rate. So what that effectively does is mean that they're not going to reap the benefits of leadership, collaboration, teamwork, tenacity, diversity, like all of those things that come in the sports environment that you learn through participation in sports. They're losing out on that. And those are things that, 94% of female CEOs and C-level executives played a sport in their younger years. Like, that's not a coincidence. That is something that is a direct correlation in what you learn in that environment translates into how you become a leader and other qualities and other values that you bring into your business life. And we need to be giving girls role models and possibility models to look up to in the sports industry as much as we do any other industry, so that they continue to participate and they continue to reap those benefits that ultimately make our overall society and world a better place.
And to add to this, at least for me, what sports gave me, sports training and me being able to travel and work with different coaches from all around the world, it's kind of ability to see myself so much more stronger than I ever thought I could be, and capable of, and seeing the progress and understanding what does it take to succeed, what kind of work with guidance. And I feel like this is what, at least for me, the biggest benefit of sports is understanding yourself better, how you gain the strength. And also what I am the most excited too about, it's for me the most straightforward measure of how you can analyze and study success and measure it. And how you said, I like it too, what you mentioned about how all the skills can be transitioned to other industries. And sports industry is really amazing to get that recognition and measurement of your development, and then use those learnings into the scale, for the scale in different industries. However, you also, previous conversations, you gave really interesting examples about the boxing of the diversity and Serena Williams example. So maybe you can mention those two again. And also, I would love to hear, and I feel like it's going to be a kind of double intake from your perspective. How did you, as an entrepreneur, how was that for you to be in the sports industry? First of all, starting the business in the industry, for profit and non-profit, and also being a woman leader in the sports industry, where you're kind of fighting alone in the field.
Yeah, so let me tackle that one first, because the boxing and Serena stuff will come up as a part of this. So I would say, first off, being a female founder in an all-female founded organization is definitely a challenge. And that really comes down to, we know, especially in the tech industry, like there are many more numbers that, are kind of out in the wild about this. But investment in women and female founded organizations is a fraction of the percentage of what it is in other male run or male inclusive companies. So one of the challenges that we've really found is that not only are we female founded, but we're promoting education around a female industry, around a female specific portion of an industry. And one that, there's a lot of old rhetoric about it that is still very much used as fact out in the world. Even though we've seen a 545% increase in female participation in sports since the passing of Title IX, And the talent pipeline that exists now in the US is significant. And we still see female athletes only receiving 0.4% of the sponsorships that go into the sports industry. So there's a real disconnect between the increase in the number of women who are coming into this industry and who are producing results and who are acting at elite levels, and the business behind that, and the investment that is going into it. So that's definitely, it's a challenge. And then you add on the layer of nonprofit that we are, and it's a different business model as well. So when we're going out to investors, not only are we walking in the door and being faced with the challenges of being a female-founded organization, supporting female athletes, but then we also don't have a technically revenue-driving model. Like, our mission is education. It is educating the public. It is creating programs that will get them to look at women's sports in a different way. And that's a different model that requires a company to look at us in a different way, to potentially pull us into their marketing budget, if that, is a part of their overarching marketing strategy, or to pull us into their their CSR, their community social responsibility line item, which for the most part, unfortunately, CSR, even though it's significantly increased over the years, and there are more companies who have CSR and social responsibility teams, funding wise, it is still one of the lowest funding portions of the budget of any given company. So the amount of the pool of money that we're going after is significantly smaller. So it means that we really have to make every dollar stretch. Every single thing that we put out, every single opportunity that we go after, we have to ensure that it is resourced in the right way, that we are able to produce the right level of quality, while also making sure that we receive, and this goes back to your comment about measurability, we receive the most impact that we possibly can off of every single piece that goes out. So I will use as an example, our current campaign that we have running right now is the SheIS challenge. In order to put that entire campaign together, we knew that we needed to reach literally millions of people on a shoestring budget. So going the typical routes that a larger organization might do, we can't put $100,000 like Coca-Cola does, into Facebook advertising, or into promoting something, having a promoted tweet, or into doing an AdWords campaign. Like, that's not a threshold of our budget. We have to rely on our collective group and on igniting more of a virality in what we're doing, and in order to spark that engagement. And so that's, it's definitely been a tougher road. But the nice thing is that by us all standing together, we have been able to capitalize on that collective voice. So our SheIS collective is the first time in history when all of the women's professional leagues, multiple different governing bodies, multiple different athletes from all different sports and all different types of backgrounds, as well as business leaders, both from in the sports world and outside of it, have all stood together, and male and female as well. Like, that's really important to say too. Like, this is an inclusive effort. Have all stood together and have used their collective voice to help share out that message. So now through that, we've reached 270 million people over the course of the campaign. And our total paid advertising spend has been less than $5,000. So it's making that dollar amount stretch as far as we can. And it's a challenge. It's a really big challenge. And you come up against, as we're putting messaging out there, we're coming up against the comment box and those old narratives being thrown at us, and a lot of, you know, the challenges that we face with getting people to actually take action. You know, go and buy a ticket, go put your butt in the seat, go put your eyeballs on the screen. Like that's what makes the material impact. Sharing a video doesn't save women's sports. That doesn't actually have a material impact on their bottom line, but buying a ticket does. Watching their program, that increases their viewership. And ultimately, what we're, you know, saying to fans and how we're making our message stretch and making those dollars stretch is with that fan engagement. We're putting it out to the collective group. We're putting it out to the collective fan base and saying, look, we need your help. We can't do this alone. We need for this to be something that the community comes behind and stands behind and says, this isn't just lip service. I don't just support women. I'm not just going to say that I support women. I'm going to turn around and do something about it. I'm going to buy a ticket. I'm going to watch that game, because when the viewership goes up, and WNBA is a perfect example of this, their viewership increased 35% last year with their broadcasts on ESPN. They now have a 40-game deal with CBS for this season and for multiple seasons going forward. You know, when that viewership goes up, that gives the momentum for more sponsorship, for more media attention, for more coverage that allows the business to expand.
Thank you so much for sharing.
I've kind of gone a long way around, but
no, but this is why I love hearing your story, because against all odds in such a raw industry, being a female, not having enough money for the budget and having such a big goals and the stereotypes and walls to crash to be able to achieve those goals, you actually were able to get those astonishing results with engagement. And how you said that not only by, you know, making people going to the games, participating and showing their new engagement, new action plans, new purchasing. And maybe you could share one major learning, how you were able to achieve this. I know you're also a really educated and quite a big expert on digital. Did this knowledge help you to reach this kind of results in such a challenging area?
Absolutely. And that's, I mean, like I said at the beginning, a lot of my background is in marketing, advertising, and data technology. Understanding data and building stories from an insight first perspective has always been my approach. And I have found that to be the most successful when going to market with things. When you can say, you know, it used to be 1 out of every 28 girls participated in sport, and now it's 2 out of every 5. Like, those are data numbers that support the story that there is more participation happening, that there is more talent coming into the women's sports world, that it wasn't what it was 20 years ago. And that we now have very well established elite athletes who, you know, whereas, I mean, the WNBA is only going into its 23rd season, and they're getting an average attendance of give or take 7,000 at every single game. The NBA going into its 23rd season was getting 6,000 people at each of their games. So the WNBA is already outperforming what the NBA was doing at the same time in its timeline, and using that data to tell those stories, and using that kind of background that I have in terms of bringing that to the surface has been an absolute kind of material difference in our approach and in how we have gone to market with things. And it also helps to set up more resource for, you know, how women's sports is performing. You know, the digital expertise that I bring to SheIS then translates to digital expertise that we can offer to our collective. Because ultimately, SheIS doesn't exist without all of the organizations who have agreed to stand with us and have agreed to be a part of this collective voice. So we try to ensure that we are helping them to succeed through providing data and information to them that allows them to educate their fans as much as we are, that allows them to have those more fluent conversations. And maybe that's through, actually feeding them the data. Maybe that's through telling them about a new system or a new, way of using MailChimp to send out email marketing. Like this is all, it can get kind of tactical in some ways, but they're little things that help our collective group to be more efficient in how they are running marketing campaigns and how they're kind of going out to market and having that conversation with their fans. And that's definitely something that my background has been able to bring into this. And the other thing that I will say though, is that, I'm not doing this alone. And my business partner has come from a background of being a commissioner in a women's pro league, of having a longstanding background in the sports world at a leadership level. So combined, we are both bringing in a knowledge and an expertise that creates a unique opportunity for our collective members to learn from that experience, to be able to grow from that experience, and ultimately for all of us to be able to translate that to better fan engagement and overall business growth for the women's sports world.
Yeah, and how you said it, I feel when we learn more data, the sports fan, sports industry participant is really engaged and passionate. So utilizing those emotions and passion for seeing successes and the failures and people watching sports, of having this kind of always not knowing what's gonna happen, excitement is really what makes this industry beautiful in learning how to utilize us for participate in the sports better and enhance the sports industry. And I would love to transition now to really interesting questions what you guys are writing, and I feel like it's gonna be perfect for us. I see one of the questions is about future sports, and I would love to leave this question at the end for all of us to answer. But first of all, for you, Caiti, you may maybe tackle some of the questions, for example, about women. James Simek is asking how might you sustain women's professional sports like NWHL?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the biggest things in sustaining women's professional sports is growing the fan base. It is growing the number of people who, like you said earlier, are putting their butts in seats and they're putting their eyeballs on screens. One of the biggest ways that this can happen is through marketing and through how we are telling stories around the athletes themselves, because there's a personal and an emotional connection that happens between fans and the athletes and the teams. And as women's sports continues to age, because that's the other part to this, like women's sports is still at the professional level is still quite young. Like WNBA is in its 23rd season. National Pro Fast Pitch is going into its 16th season. You do have some of, the older ones. WTA, has been around for 4 decades, almost 5 decades. And LPGA has been around for 7 decades now, I want to say. I may be getting that wrong. But look at what has happened in terms of pay, in terms of marketing in those sports. Like golf and tennis are 2 of the only sports where women can actually make millions of dollars, where they can actually have the same prize pots as their male counterparts. That is because there is a growth over time that has occurred, and there is an aging and a maturing of the sport, but there's also an aging and a maturing of the emotional connection between the fans and those particular athletes. There are Billie Jean Kings in the world now that people idolize because she's been making a difference and having an impact for 40 plus years. That doesn't yet exist. It's starting to. It's definitely starting to with the WNBA, for sure. It's starting to in other sports, but it doesn't quite yet exist. And so what we also have to really do with women's sports is allow it that time to breathe, allow it that time to grow, while supporting it. Well, the fan base, the promotion right now, right here today, is go put your butt in a seat. Go elicit your friends to put their butts in their seats. I mean, the women's U.S. national team is coming to New York for their final soccer game before they head over to the Women's World Cup. They're going to be here on May 26th. And I put out the call, regardless of if I had been with SheIS or not. Like, I would have put out the call. It's happening at Red Bull Stadium. And I have a group of me and 5 of my friends who are going to that. Like, that's something that the individual fan can do. And when we sell out those stadiums, when we start creating more of that storytelling, that emotional connection around the athletes who are on the field, and when we give women's sports the time that it needs to build that nostalgia, to build that emotional connection with its fan base, and especially with the young fan base, with the kids, and they start seeing these women as their idols, as people that they want to look up to, that's where you start to see the future growth of women's sports.
Especially how you mentioned to see those idols like Serena Williams and the others who are fighting to show how beautiful the sport is, how different the sport is, woman and male sport, which is a bit different, but also brings really different excitement, what we can engage with. Also fighting for the equal pay, how you said, and I feel we're able to answer certain questions what our attendees here at the seminar were having, how improve sponsorship in women's sports can be, how they can make a difference, help them make a difference, and how you said that if I got it correctly, is by actually participating and supporting women's sports and promoting and learning a little bit more about it.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm looking at both of those questions as well. I think the improvement on the business side of women's sports will happen with the improvement of the fan base. So it literally is up to us. Like, I appreciate that there are conversations, and they are important conversations to have, about media coverage and accessibility. And those conversations need to happen. This is not to discount those, but there is something that we as the fan base can personally do. We can show up to those games. Yes, they're probably going to be a little bit further out because the stadiums aren't in the city center like the men's sports are. They're probably going to, require a little bit more coordination in terms of both getting there and buying a ticket. Or if you're going to be watching it on TV or online, figuring out where to watch. Which, by the way, a lot of this information is available on our website, on our calendar. We have housed everything in one spot for the first time across all of women's sports, so you can easily find it.
And the website is SheISsports.com, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, it really is about how can the fan base take that first step? How can we show up? Because if 20,000 people are showing up, like almost 23,000 people showed up to the last women's soccer game. If 23,000 people are showing up to every single NWSL game, there is not a chance that the media wouldn't be covering that, and that they wouldn't have sponsorship dollars rolling in because of that, because it's a consistent audience that's in place. And that's what that's the media's audience. They want to be there. That's the sponsor's audience. They want to be there. So it's truly up to us as the fan base to show up and to be there and to demonstrate that women's sports are worth watching, that we as an audience are invested in that, and everything else follows.
Unfortunately, we're running out of the time, but maybe in few words you can answer Anita Shesta, if I pronounce correctly, question about what technology do you use to collect data? And then I have a few questions what I would love to address to Nico about the esports and the stadiums and the future of sports.
Yes. So in terms of the technology that we use, right now it's all proprietary. So we are collecting data through a number of different systems and different partnerships, and actually striking up a couple of different partnerships. So unfortunately, I can't go into a ton of detail around that right now. But as we announce those, obviously keep an eye on SheISsport.com. Follow us at Team SheIS on our social channels, and we will make those announcements. In terms of esports, that is absolutely, I think, an incredible growth area for sports. We just recently brought on Lazarus up in Canada into the collective. So we now have 2 all-female esports teams as a part of our ambassador group in our SheIS Nation. And we definitely see the incredible growth that is happening in esports. And we love the fact that is one of the arenas where, while our 2 teams are both all-female, there's actually no reason why there couldn't be male and female, co-ed teams, because a lot of the concerns that, people have around weight classes and various other physical dynamics of sports, and why, which is a whole other subject that we can discuss in another time. Mm-hmm. But, those don't exist in the esports world. So there's a real opportunity for there to be more women coming into that space, and being very participatory in that space, which we're really excited about the partnership with Lazarus because of that.
Nice. And I feel like sports industry is really, really benefiting and willing to cooperate, to share and to engage, because that passion, it only grows when everybody is engaged. And Nico, there's a really interesting question from Rishi Chopra, who is asking about, is emerging markets, for example, as esports, positive for sports entertainment entrepreneurs and athletes more general? What do you think?
I think it's quite a tricky question. There's enough content for a whole e-seminar. To keep it short, I think for the entrepreneurs, it definitely is. So huge opportunities. Esports is very small. I mean, the entire industry is $1 billion US dollars. That's the current estimate for this year. Most of it from the US, and then some from China, and then the rest of the world. This will heavily grow. Growth rates are, again, off the charts. So for entrepreneurs, obviously, it's a great playing field. The impact on society is a whole other topic, and I don't really want to touch on it here. We'll take us too deep. But esports will grow. It's not the question if it will happen. It's just a question how it will happen and how we will treat it and regulate it. Yeah.
And I feel if people want to learn a little bit more about esports, in your research at your university, WHU, you guys doing a lot of interesting representation and analysis of the esports, right? Where can people learn more about it? Maybe you can direct them.
So if they check us out, the Center for Sports and Management at WHU, they'll find it at csm.whu.edu. We wrote a Harvard business case or a business case on. We wrote a couple of Harvard business cases on sports, on TC Oppenheim technology. I think the esports case is not a Harvard case, but from another series. But it gives a good background on the entire sports industry. We publish in popular press as well on eSports. Just go check it out. It's interesting.
And which stadium do you think is the most advanced with technologies?
I saw that question. Tricky. I think it's not in Europe. I don't think it's in Europe. I don't know much about US stadiums, though. I read about it every now and then. I wouldn't know the names now. In Europe, certainly Madrid, the new stadium they opened, and the stadium of Tottenham Hotspurs would be the most technologically advanced. In Germany, SAP Arena, which is an ice hockey arena, is fairly advanced. That's
the one where Bootcamp will be, right?
Exactly. Stadium of TSG Hoffenheim, also stadium of SAP, is the same owner than the ice hockey club. Those are probably some of the most advanced stadiums around here. But it's also important to remember, right? If I go to US stadium, I want a very advanced stadium. If I go to a football stadium in Europe, I prefer the old stadium that's just making the security standards, but otherwise keep it simple.
Keep it sentimental.
Exactly.
And, since I don't want to keep everybody too long glued to the screen, I want to ask the last question about your sentiments about future of sports, and what would you love to take away from this conversation to our attendees.
Am I doing that one first?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I would say the future of sports, and this is going to sound like the cliche line, the future of sports is female. It is absolutely where the highest amount of growth potential exists, if we treat it as the business that it is. You can see what WWE has done in recent years, in the recent 4 years, in really shifting a lot of their focus, a lot of their investment into elevating their female superstars, changing them from having 15-second spots to having now most recently at their WrestleMania, which is their Super Bowl, essentially. They had their first all-female headliner main event, which has never happened. And it was the 35th WrestleMania that they've held. So, and these are events that literally rank in terms of there are cities that bid same way as they might bid to have the World Cup, they bid to have WrestleMania present. So to have women headlining that event is really monstrumental. That is going to be true of any of the other sports and across the sports industry. And if we can figure out the right ways to capitalize on data and technology and elevating the conversation and the narratives around women's sports in a way that helps to increase fan engagement and nostalgic support and emotional connection, there is a really, really quite limitless opportunity that exists on that side of the sports industry.
Thank you, Caiti. And Nico, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So my greatest takeaway, I guess, is Caiti's right. We need to watch women's sports. I think one of the biggest things for women's sports to catch up is they need to create more stories around their players. They need to help the fan to follow their team, right? There's some of the football that I watch, man football. I don't watch it because the football is such high quality. I watch it because I follow certain people. So that's one thing. And for the second part of the question, the future of sports, I'm just going to pick one thing that I'm very excited about is we'll be able to relive the action, I think. Through virtual reality, augmented reality, I can go into the perspective of any players, Lionel Messi or Tom Brady or you name it. So that's what I'm most excited about, because not a lot of people can be on the court playing against Roger Federer, but they can feel what it's like with virtual reality. That's my biggest hope for the future of sports.
Thank you so much for sharing. And my kind of future sports excitement is definitely diversity of the sports, not only more engagement of women, female, but also more different sports and learning about them. New sports were born, which are really interesting. as when you control games only through your thoughts. And I'm a huge fan of Robo Race, where they have autonomous vehicle racing and the whole team, how they're advancing with technologies and with fan engagement, when fans will be able to control those games and participate, and how you said, Nico, engage in the games in more ways than just cheering. But also how you mentioned, Caiti, is data driven, which is now power, information and data. So we need many more scientists, data analysts, and the business educated people and scientists in the sports industry to make it kind of capitalizing all these opportunities in the industry. So thank you so much, everybody who joined us today to learn a little bit about the sports industry. It is really big topic. However, we wanted to cover at least some of it. In the future seminars, we will maybe be going in more detail into specific subjects of the sports industry. And because of all these opportunities, and the MIT Sports Entrepreneurship was created, where we wanted to unite all these experts and work together on creating new startups, new scaling opportunities for the people who want to build careers in the sports industry, or who want to create the startups in the industry and enter such an exciting part of our lives. And MIT Sports Bootcamp will be September 7th through 13th in Hoffenheim, in beautiful stadium, which will be led by really advanced knowledge Professor Ben Shields in communications and media. He, by the way, has amazing podcast, and you can listen about sports analytics, especially on Counterpoints podcast. And also, we will really be happy to join bootcamp by Sasha Schmidt, who will be talking with Nico together on future of sports, and they really interesting researches, and the esports, and all of us sharing that knowledge only makes us better. So thank you so much for joining us. Please follow the bootcamp seminars through bootcamp.mit.edu/sports, and also you can find other bootcamps there and other seminars there. Follow Caiti on SheISsports.com, and follow if you want to find out more about research what Nico and the School of Management is doing. Go to WHU University Sports field. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Caiti. Thank you, Nico, and see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.